that song you run, and I mean run. 'Cause that song means something terrible for you. Something so terrible you couldn't dream of it. Not in your worst, most terrible nightmare.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I must be doing something right if you've come back. And if you're new, then welcome. My name is Declan. Think about subscribing because it would mean so much to me. Also, be sure to check out my Weird World mystery videos right here on my channel. I've created a playlist and I'm sure there is so much for you to enjoy. Tonight's video is one hell of a tale. You really have to listen intently and try and follow along as best you can. It involves a missing person, a murder, a cover-up, a deadly secret, a car chase, and it all takes place on one lonely stretch of road called Snow Perry Highway. Only question is, who's to blame? This entire story is built up of three major couples. Introducing first couple, Dennis and Marilyn Depeu from Coldwater, Michigan. Dennis is a 46-year-old property assessor, while Marilyn is a guidance counsellor at a local high school. They'd been married for 18 years and raised three children: Julie, the youngest, Scott, the middle child, and Jennifer, the eldest. From an outsider's perspective, their lives were perfect. They had it all: the house, good jobs, happiness. But behind closed doors was an entirely different story. You see, Marilyn and Dennis had major problems. Throughout these years of marriage, Dennis became withdrawn. He just wasn't in it anymore. Things started to become very bitter between the two, and it often ended in an argument, which Dennis would say Marilyn was trying to turn the children against him. Marilyn really only had her girlfriends to rely on, and during girls' nights, she would express to them all she wanted was out of this marriage. She said that at this point she just felt so unhappy and trapped. With Marilyn wanting a divorce for so long, during the winter of 1989, she finally filed for one. She made several claims, and some of these claims were that Dennis was very controlling, and it had gotten to the point where he was restricting her from making any of her own decisions. Dennis, however, was very much against this. He wanted to keep Marilyn in the marriage, but failed to do so, as the divorce was granted just 1 year later in 1990. Dennis and Marilyn were no more, but there's a catch: the children. He was given what was called bi-weekly visitation rights, which is basically where you can visit once every 2 weeks, or 2 times in 1 week, which is a very strange setup, but it worked for them. Although, whenever it came time for Dennis to come and collect the children, none of them ever wanted to go with him, and they just preferred to stay with Marilyn. During the divorce, he was also given access to the guest house, which he then transformed into an office. This is also where things take a weird world turn, because I'm about to tell you guys a side of Dennis that nobody knew unless you were behind those closed doors. After being given access to the guest house / transformed into an office, it was said that Dennis only used this privilege to continue to watch over Marilyn and dictate her every move. And sometimes Dennis would overstep the boundaries by welcoming himself into the family home, which obviously wasn't allowed anymore. Marilyn didn't want that. Out of fear, she decided to change the locks to the entire house. But sometimes she would walk into a random room, and there would be Dennis sitting. She never did find out how he was gaining access into the house. Meet couple number 2, Mary and Hank. They were newish to dating, but they were madly in love. They cozied up in their home in Dallas, Texas, and everything was new and exciting until one night, Mary returned home from work at around 8:30 p.m. to find Hank in a state of panic. He had just been given news that his mum had taken ill and he had to be by her side immediately. Mary didn't really know how to help in any way because she was just bombarded with all of this the second she walked in the door, and she could see that Hank was really flustered, just packing everything that he could. She decided that since it was going to be quite a long drive for Hank to get to where he needed to be, she was going to go make him a snack. So she was popping her head in and out of the kitchen and the living room door just to check on him. Once the sandwiches are made, she tries to have one last go at trying to understand this hectic situation and just get some answers out of him because he's very much in a state of shock right now. She didn't really get much answers though, because Hank at this point isn't that talkative. He packs the rest of what he needs into his suitcase, turns off the TV, and says his farewell. The both of them then head outside. Hank loads up the van, Mary waves him goodbye, and he heads down the highway. Easter Sunday, April 15th, 1990. Meet couple number 3, Ray and Marie Thornton. Ray and Marie Thornton were a happy couple, also from Coldwater, Michigan. Just like Dennis and Marilyn, only difference is they were actually in love. Every single Sunday, the couple would go a drive down Snow Perry Road. However, this one Sunday would change their lives forever. While the pair were driving down this highway, they would play the license plate game, which I'm sure many of you guys have played, and if you haven't, it's basically where you take a license plate on the first car that drives past you, and you try and work out the hidden meaning behind it, whether they're trying to sneakily spell out something rude or funny. During this game, a speeding van zooms past them, and even though they're a little bit in shock at how fast this is going, they stick to their game and they realise that the license plate began with GZ.
Look at this guy coming around us, honey. Sure is in a hurry.
Further up Snow Perry Road is an old abandoned building. It used to be a school, but it's so run down, everybody just forgot it was even there. While passing this abandoned old school, Marie noticed the van parked in between the building and an old tank.
There's the van that passed us.
She then seen the driver of the van tossing what appeared to be a bloody sheet into a deep hole in the ground. Seconds passed with the couple trying to work out what they had just seen, and in that space of time, the driver of the van had gotten back into the vehicle, door slammed, foot on the pedal, and began to chase after the Thorntons. The guy rode their bumper for several miles until Ray swerved off the road onto a dirt track, losing him. I'm sure at this point most of you guys would be focusing on getting the hell out of there and getting to the nearest phone to call for help, right? But not the Thorntons. Their curiosity got the better of them, and they decided that they were going to go back and investigate what this psycho was throwing down that hole, because they had just gave them a good reason that he was up to no good. However, when they doubled round and went back down the way that they came, the van was parked at the end of the road, with the guy crouching down at the back of it, changing the license plate. The both of them were really trying to get a good look at his face, but they were distracted. They noticed while they were swerving round him that the passenger door was open, and the fabric was soaked in blood. Whoever this guy was had just done something awful. They continue on their journey, and several miles back up the road, they arrive at the school and head to the hole. When they get to the hole, they are horrified. They discover a bloody, soaked sheet shoved deep into it. They left the scene immediately and informed the police. The school was now a crime scene. Before I go any further, I've actually lied to you guys. This is where the story's biggest twist comes in, and it's about to get a whole lot more sinister. Going back to Dennis and Marilyn, they actually had a lot more issues than you think. You see, they were actually classed as missing people after one night got way out of hand. That same Easter night that the Thorntons went on their drive, Dennis arrived at Marilyn's to pick up 2 of the children, his younger daughter Julie and his middle child Scott. But they were both refusing to go with him. Marilyn tried her hardest to reason with everybody, but she wasn't going to be the one to force the children to go with them, so she decided to speak to Dennis, but he got so angry and started attacking her. He started yelling at her, and then pushing her, and then hitting at her, and then he threw her down the basement stairs. And at the bottom of the stairs, he continued to beat her. The children were in hysterics at this point, and they were screaming, just begging him to stop and leave their mum alone, but he never listened to them. The eldest daughter, Jennifer, she decided to run to the neighbour's house and call the police for help, because there was nothing she could physically do. Several minutes later, when she arrived back home, Dennis was carrying Marilyn up the basement stairs, putting her in the car, and explaining to the children that he was going to take her to the hospital. At this point, Marilyn is so badly beaten that she doesn't have any fight in her to speak out against this idea, and the children are just assuming that their dad, even though he just done something awful, is finally doing the right thing and taking her to go get help. But they never arrive at the hospital. Because Jennifer had just made that phone call, a search for the 2 launched immediately. There's one couple that sticks out that I never really told you much about: Mary and Hank. Where do they fit into all of this? Fast forward a few days after that Easter Sunday, the 15th to the 20th, and Hank leaves to help his sick mum. You know the story. Mary comes home, sick mum, Hank packs, turns off TV, waves goodbye, heads down the highway. I've told you before, but what you don't know is what happened after that. After Hank left, Mary turns on the TV that Hank turned off. Broadcasting is an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. It's telling the tale of a couple driving down Snow Perry Road and the chilling encounter they had with a murderer only a few days ago. The show reenacts the entire scene out, from the license plate game the Thorntons were playing, to the old school, to the van. The exact same van that just left Mary's driveway. That's right. Hank, aka Dennis, had been living a double life. There was no sick mum. His story and what he had just done to poor Marilyn was blasted all over the TV. That's why he turned it off when Mary entered the room. It was so that she didn't see it and he could make a clean getaway. But he highly underestimated Mary because she could still remember the license plate. So she got together with her neighbour, which was also her best friend, and they contacted the Unsolved Mysteries helpline. The hunt for Hank, aka Dennis, was on. But what about poor Marilyn? Well, after her beating when they left the house to go to the hospital, Dennis actually murdered her in cold blood by shooting her in the back of the head. The exact details of that night are unknown, which I'll get to in a minute. But he must have murdered Marilyn, wrapped her up in that sheet, and kept her in the passenger side of the van, hence why there was blood all over the passenger door that the Thorntons seen. He then drove her out to a deserted road and dumped her body in a ditch at the side of the highway, which was found the next day by highway maintenance workers. And then this is where the stories all start to collide, because he then drives up the highway, zooms past a car, which in that car is the Thorntons. He then heads to the school and dumps that bloody sheet into that hole. He also left some clues at the school because in the dirt ingrained into it was tire marks. It didn't take long for the police to gather up their information from those clues, as well as Jennifer making that call, the Thorntons making that call, and they ended up concluding that someone responsible for this horrendous crime was Dennis. But remember, he's now on the run because he left Mary's. Did he get away? Louisiana state troopers actually ended up tracking down Dennis's van and tried to pull him over, but he refused. He ended up leading them into Mississippi on a 15-mile high-speed chase. On this rampage, Dennis ended up driving through 2 barricades that were formed by the police, and this led them to believe that he wasn't going to stop for anyone, so it left them no choice but for the troops to shoot out his tires. Once the tires were shot out and Dennis couldn't go anywhere, he fired 3 rounds of bullets at the deputies before turning his last bullet on himself. Till his death, Dennis tried to justify mentally and physically abusing Marilyn and then murdering her. Dennis sent several erratic and rambling letters to friends and family explaining to them that he had a good reason to do so. When I was doing my research on this case, I found it so creepy and so sinister. Dennis is one of those people that you really can't work out like what's going on in his mind, that the fact that he was trying to justify it just makes no sense. If you think this story kind of sounds familiar, it's probably because you've seen the movie Jeepers Creepers, which is very heavily inspired off of these true events. I really hope you guys found this video interesting and it doesn't keep you up at night. Like, subscribe, do the whole thing. This is Weird World and I'll hopefully see you guys in my next video. Bye!
Something so terrible you couldn't dream of it. Not in your worst, most terrible nightmare.